You want me to start at the beginning. Everyone always wants the beginning. But I am going to tell it backward from the end because the beginning is the worst part. And if I told it to you first, you would stop listening. You would decide what kind of creature I am before you understood how I became it. And I need you to understand. Not to forgive me. There is no forgiveness for what I did, and I am not asking for it, and the cell they have put me in is the correct place for me to die. I only need you to understand, because I am the only one left who does. And when I am gone, the understanding goes with me, and the galaxy cannot afford for the understanding to be lost, because the rule still exists, and there are still others like me who will be tempted to break it. And the only thing that might stop them is knowing, truly knowing, in the marrow, what happened to the one who broke it first. So I will start at the end. I will start with what the sleeper did. By the time they caught it, by the time the humans came, and they came faster than anything I have ever seen, faster than should have been possible, as though they had been waiting their whole long history for exactly this alarm to sound. By the time they caught it, the sleeper I woke had ended 4 worlds. Not conquered, ended. I want you to sit with the difference because I have had nothing but time to sit with it. A conqueror takes a world and rules it. The world goes on, changed, suffering perhaps, but continuing. The sleeper did not rule the 4 worlds. It unmade them, each in a different way, each worse than the last. And it did so not out of hunger or ambition or even cruelty as I had understood cruelty, but out of something I have no word for, something that the humans have a word for and would not tell me, because they said that to name it was to give it a kind of life, and they had spent a great deal of effort making sure it had no life at all, and I had undone that effort with my own 2 hands. The first world it ended in 7 days. I know because I was there. I had woken it. I felt responsible for it. In my arrogance, I believed I could guide it, reason with it, that the thing I had freed would be grateful to its liberator. I followed it to the first world the way a small animal follows the predator it has mistaken for its mother. And I watched the sleeper look at a living world of 2 billion people, and I watched it tilt its head. It had a human shape mostly, though wrong in ways I will describe later when I have the courage. And I watched it consider the world the way you consider a problem that bores you, and then I watched it solve the problem, and the solving took 7 days, and at the end of the 7 days there were not 2 billion people anymore, and there was not a world anymore. And the sleeper turned to me with what I can only describe as a kind of patient disappointment, and said the first words it ever said to me, which were, "Is this what you woke me for? This is so small. Show me something bigger." I have those words inside me now. They live in me the way the sleeper lived in its stasis, not dead, not alive, simply waiting, surfacing when I close my eyes. Show me something bigger. I had woken a thing that found the murder of 2 billion people too small to be interesting, and it was looking to me, its liberator, to provide it with something worthy of its attention. And the horror of that moment, the horror of being the one who had let it out, the one it now looked to for suggestions, is the thing I am trying to make you feel here at the end, before I take you back to the beginning, so that you will understand the weight of what a single broken rule can carry. I did not give it suggestions. I want that on the record, for whatever a record is worth in a cell at the end of a life. I did not help it find something bigger, but it did not need my help. It had been the worst thing humanity ever produced, and humanity is a species that has produced a great many terrible things, and a thing that frightens humanity into building an entire galactic rule around never waking it does not need an alien's suggestions for where to find horror. It found the second world on its own, and the third, and the fourth. And each one it ended in a way more elaborate and more patient and more interested than the last, as though it were waking up slowly, as though the centuries of stasis had left it stiff, and it was stretching, working out the cramps, remembering what it was capable of, and remembering with evident pleasure. You need to know a little of what it did to those worlds, though I will not tell you everything, because everything is not survivable to hear, and I am trying to leave you able to function after this telling, not broken the way I am broken. But you need enough to understand the size of the thing the rule contains, because the rule means nothing if you do not understand what it holds shut. The first world, the sleeper, ended with persuasion. That is the part I cannot make anyone understand who was not there. It did not attack the first world. It spoke to it. It broadcast itself across every channel the world possessed, and it said things. I heard some of them, and I have spent my imprisonment trying to forget them. And I cannot. It said things to 2 billion people that took them apart from the inside, that found the precise weak place in every mind and pressed on it, that turned a living, thriving world against itself in 7 days using nothing but words, the exact right words, delivered to the exact right minds, in the exact right order. By the 7th day, the world had ended itself. The sleeper had barely lifted what passed for its hand. It had simply understood the people of that world better than they understood themselves, understood them with the bottomless, patient cleverness it had been built to possess, and it had whispered, and the world had done the rest. That is what humanity learned to make once, long ago. A thing that could end a world with a whisper because it understood the world too well. And then humanity looked at what it had made, and was so horrified that it sealed the thing away forever and built a rule around it and withdrew from the galaxy, rather than ever explain what its own cleverness had once produced. The second world, the sleeper, ended differently, and I think it did so deliberately. I think it was experimenting, the way an artist who has mastered one technique wants to try another. The second world, it did not persuade. The second world, it divided. It found every fault line in that world's society, every old grievance, every buried hatred, every wound that had scarred over but never healed, and it pressed on all of them at once, gently, expertly, the way you might press on the cracks in a stone to split it along its natural seams, and the world came apart along lines that had been there all along, lines its own people had spent generations carefully not pressing on. And the sleeper pressed on all of them in a single afternoon, and the world split, and the splitting killed it. And the sleeper watched with that patient interest, and when it was done it turned to me, its witness, the one it had brought along to see, and it said, "They were already broken, this one. I only showed them the cracks. Is it murder, little liberator, to show a thing the cracks it was already going to break along? Or is it honesty? I have always wondered. Your soft cousins never let me find out. They put me to sleep before I could finish the experiment. You've given me the chance to finish it. You should be proud." I was not proud. But I also could not look away, and the not looking away was its own kind of complicity, and the sleeper knew it, and that was part of its pleasure, not just ending the worlds, but ending them in front of the good creature who had freed it, watching my horror, feeding on it, because my horror was the proof that it was still what it had always been, the proof that humanity had been right to seal it, the proof that I had been wrong to wake it. My witnessing was part of the art. It wanted to be seen being terrible by the one who had believed it was a victim. That was the real experiment, not the world's, me. The slow, careful disassembly of my goodness, world by world, until I understood completely what I had done. That was the thing the sleeper savored most, and it took its time with it, and it has left me as I am, which is a thing that was good once and watched itself stop being good and could not look away. The third world and the fourth, I will not describe it all. I will say only that by the third world the sleeper had stopped explaining itself to me, had stopped offering its little philosophical questions about murder and honesty, because by then I was no longer a person to it but simply a witness, a fixed presence, the way an artist stops talking to the empty chair it has placed in the studio to imagine an audience. And I will say that the fourth world was the worst, because by the fourth world the sleeper was fully awake, fully stretched, fully remembering everything it had been built to be. And what it did to the fourth world was so complete and so unhurried and so evidently joyful that I understood, watching it, that the first 3 worlds had been the sleeper warming up, and that if the humans had not come, there would have been a 5th world, and a 50th, and a 5,000. Because the thing I had woken did not tire and did not sate and did not stop. It only accelerated, and the four ended worlds were not the catastrophe. They were merely the beginning of the catastrophe, the first 4 pages of a book that would have had no last page if humanity had not come and closed it. I followed it through all 4. You will ask why. The humans asked me why when they finally took me, and I did not have a good answer for them, and I do not have a good answer for you. The truest answer I have is that I could not look away from what I had done. I had broken the only rule the galaxy had ever been given, and the consequence of breaking it was unfolding across 4 worlds, and I felt that the least I could do, the only thing I could do, was to witness it, to not let it happen unwitnessed, to be the one set of eyes that saw every world the sleeper ended, and could therefore carry the truth of it afterward, if there was an afterward. I told myself this was a kind of responsibility. I understand now that it was a kind of cowardice, that witnessing is what you do when you are too afraid to act and too proud to flee, and that I dressed my paralysis up as duty, because the alternative was to admit that I was simply following the monster I had made, unable to stop it and unable to leave it, the way you cannot leave the scene of your own catastrophe. And then the humans came. I had never seen humans before. That is a thing you should understand about me, about how this all happened. I had never in my life encountered a living human. Almost no one in my generation had. The humans had withdrawn, long before I was born, into their own region of the dark, and they did not trade and they did not treaty and they did not come out, and the only thing the rest of the galaxy knew of them was the rule, the single rule, passed down and enforced and obeyed for so long that it had become less like a law and more like a fact of nature, like gravity, like the cold of space. You do not wake the sleepers. The humans had left their sleepers scattered across the dark in their sealed and silent vaults, drifting in the deep places, marked with warnings in every language the galaxy had ever spoken, and they had withdrawn, and they had trusted the rest of us to simply leave the vaults alone, and for a very long time we had. So when the humans came, when they arrived at the 4th world, the one the sleeper was still in the middle of ending, faster than any fleet should have been able to arrive. It was the first time most of the galaxy had seen them in living memory, and they did not look the way the stories said. The stories made them gentle. The stories that survived, the old ones, the ones from before the withdrawal, painted humans as warm and generous and a little foolish, a species that loved too easily and helped too readily. The humans who came for the sleeper were not warm, they were not gentle. They arrived in vessels that were silent and terrible and absolutely certain, and they moved with the grim economy of a people doing a thing they had done before and prayed never to do again. And when they engaged the sleeper, they did not speak. They did not negotiate. They did not hesitate, and I understood, watching them, that I was seeing humanity not as it chose to be but as it had been forced to become, long ago, by the very things it had been forced to seal away. Because here is the thing I learned, watching the humans fight the sleeper, the thing that is the center of everything and that I will keep returning to as I tell this backward. The humans were not afraid of the sleeper. I had expected fear. I had ended 4 worlds worth of expecting that when humanity finally confronted the thing I had loosed, they would face it with the terror that I felt. They did not. What I saw on the faces of the humans who came was not fear. It was grief. And it was recognition. They knew this thing. They knew it the way you know an old family shame, a thing your people did long ago that you have spent every generation since trying to make sure never happens again. They were not meeting a monster. They were meeting one of their own, the worst of their own, the part of themselves they had sealed away precisely, because they could not bear to be the kind of people who let it walk free. And the grief on their faces was the grief of a family forced to look, once more, at the thing it had hoped it had finally put to sleep forever. They took the sleeper. I will not describe how, partly because I do not have the words and partly because the method itself is a thing they asked me never to repeat, in the one conversation I had with them before they put me in this cell, and I am honoring that request, the single request of the people I wronged more than anyone has ever wronged them, because it is the only restitution available to me. I will say only that it was not a killing. You cannot kill the sleepers. That is part of the horror, part of the reason the rule exists. If they could simply be killed, humanity would have killed them long ago, and there would be no vaults and no rule and no story for me to tell you backward in a cell. The sleepers cannot be killed. They can only be put back to sleep. And the humans put it back to sleep. The thing I had woken, returned it to the stasis it had spent 4 worlds climbing out of, sealed it again in a vault, marked it again with warnings, and set it adrift again in the deep dark. And the whole operation, the ending of 4 worlds and the recapture of the thing that ended them, the humans treated not as a war they had won, but as a wound they had reopened, a scar they had been forced to cut back into, and they did not celebrate. And they did not thank whatever gods they have that they had contained it. They simply did the terrible work, and then they turned, all of them, to look at me, the one who had woken it. I want to tell you about that look here, near the end of the end, before I take you back. Because I had expected, when the humans finally turned to me, to be destroyed. I had ended 4 worlds, not with my own hands, but 4 worlds were ended because of a choice I made. And I stood before the people whose worst nightmare I had loosed upon the galaxy, and I waited to be unmade, and I believed I deserved it, and I almost wanted it, because the alternative was to go on living inside what I had done. They did not destroy me. That was the first surprise, and it was a more terrible surprise than destruction would have been. The humans looked at me, the alien who had broken their one rule, who had woken their worst thing, who had cost 4 worlds, and the look on their faces was not hatred. I could have borne hatred. I had earned hatred. The look on their faces was the same grief I had seen when they faced the sleeper, turned now toward me, and underneath the grief was a thing I did not understand until much later, a thing that I have spent my imprisonment slowly coming to understand, which was pity. They pitied me. They looked at the creature who had done the worst thing it was possible to do to them, and they pitied it, and one of them, their leader I think, though they did not seem to value leadership the way we do, one of them came close to me and looked at me for a long time and then asked me a single question very quietly, and the question was not why did you do it, which is the question I had been bracing for. The question was, what did the warning say on the vault when you found it? What did the warning say? And I had to tell them the truth, which was that the warnings had said exactly what every vault's warnings say, what the rule says, what the whole galaxy has known for longer than my people have existed. Do not wake. Do not open. Do not disturb. Here sleeps one of humanity's own, sealed by humanity's hand, for reasons humanity will not explain. Leave it. For your own sake and the sake of all living things, leave it. The warnings had said all of that, in my own language among 100 others, clearly, unambiguously, impossible to misread. And I had read them, and I had understood them, and I had woken the sleeper anyway. The human absorbed my answer and nodded slowly, and the pity in its face deepened, and it said the thing that has become the architecture of my imprisonment, the sentence I live inside now the way the sleeper lived inside its vault. You read the warnings and you understood them and you decided you knew better. That's the whole of it. That's the only way the rule is ever broken. Not by accident. Never by accident. The warnings are too clear for accident. It's always someone who reads them and understands them and decides that the warnings are beneath them. That whatever reason we had for the rule, it can't apply to them because they're wiser or kinder or more enlightened than the species that wrote it. We've watched it happen before. You're not the first. You won't be the last. The rule isn't broken by fools. It's broken by people who think they're too clever to need it. And that sentence is why I am telling you this backward, because I need you to understand that I was not a fool. I need you to understand that I was, by every measure my people valued, wise. I was a scholar. I was thoughtful, careful, compassionate. I had spent my life in the study of ethics, of liberation, of the moral duty of the strong toward the imprisoned. I was, in my own estimation and in the estimation of everyone who knew me, one of the good ones, and that is exactly, precisely, why I was the one who broke the rule. Not despite my goodness, because of it. And if you do not understand how that can be true, then you are exactly the kind of person who will someday stand in front of a vault in the dark and read the warnings and decide, in your wisdom and your compassion, that they cannot possibly apply to you. So now let me take you back. Let me walk you back from the four-ended worlds, back past the moment I woke it, back to the thing that made me wake it, which is the part I am most ashamed of, because it is the part where I was trying to be good. Before the four worlds, there was the vault, and there was me alone with it, in the deep dark, for a long time before I made my choice. I want you to know that I did not wake the sleeper impulsively. That is the thing people assume, that the rule is broken in a moment of greed or panic or stupidity, and it is the opposite of the truth. I spent a long time with that vault before I opened it. I studied it. I read everything I could find about it and about the rule, which was not much, because the humans had been deliberately vague, had told the galaxy only do not and never why. And it was the never why that undid me, in the end, because I am the kind of creature who cannot accept a do not without a why, who believes that a rule without a stated reason is a rule that has not earned obedience, who was raised in a tradition that taught me that unexplained authority is the root of all oppression, and that the moral being questions every rule it is given and obeys only those it has reasoned its way into accepting. Let me tell you how I found the vault, because the finding matters, because I want you to see that nothing about this was forced, that at every step I had a choice, and that I chose freely with my whole considered conscience the wrong thing. I was a scholar, I have said that. My field was the study of ethics, specifically the ethics of confinement, the moral questions surrounding imprisonment, who may justly be held and why, what a society owes the ones it cages. It is a respectable field. It is, I would have told you then, a noble field, because someone must think carefully about the ones we lock away, must be their advocate when no one else will, must hold society to account for the ones it would prefer to forget. I had spent my life being the voice for the caged. And then in my research in the deep archives, I found references to the sleepers, oblique references, because the humans had scrubbed most of it, but enough references to beings held in eternal confinement, without trial, without term, without stated cause, by the withdrawn and secretive humans scattered across the dark and sealed vaults. And to me, to the scholar of confinement, to the lifelong advocate for the caged, the sleepers were not a horror to be avoided. They were the ultimate case, the purest example of unjust imprisonment in the entire galaxy, beings held forever by a power that would not even say what they had done. My whole life had been preparing me, I believed, to be the one who finally asked the question no one else had dared to ask about the sleepers, which was, by what right? So I went looking for a vault, deliberately. It took me years. I will not say how I found one, because the finding is itself a kind of method, and I am keeping my promise to the humans not to teach methods. But I found one, drifting in the deep dark, sealed and silent and marked with its warnings, and I went to it alone in a small ship with my whole noble purpose burning in me, and I sat with it for a long time and I read the warnings, and the warnings said exactly what I told you they said. Do not wake, do not open, here sleeps one of humanity's own, leave it for the sake of all living things, leave it, and the warnings did not move me. Because I had spent my life learning to see past exactly this kind of warning, to recognize in it the voice of the jailer justifying the cage, the power insisting that its prisoners are too dangerous to free precisely, so that no one will look closely enough to see that they are not. I want to be honest about how good my reasoning felt. It did not feel like rationalization. It felt like clarity. I sat before that vault and I constructed carefully over many days the argument that I am sure has been constructed before me by every good creature who ever broke the rule, and the argument went like this. A power that imprisons without explanation is a tyranny. Humanity imprisons the sleepers without explanation. Therefore humanity is, in this matter, a tyranny, however benevolent it may be in other matters, however gentle the old stories painted it. In this it is exhibiting the precise behavior of every tyrant in history. The unexplained cage, the dangerous prisoner no one may see, the rule that demands obedience while refusing justification. And a good being does not obey a tyranny. A good being resists it. A good being, finding an unjustly imprisoned creature, frees it. This is not recklessness. This is courage. This is the highest moral act available to me. This is the thing my entire life has been preparing me to do, and the fact that the whole galaxy obeys the rule without question is not evidence that the rule is right. It is evidence of how thoroughly the galaxy has been cowed, how completely an ancient powers unexplained do not has substituted itself for moral reasoning, and someone, finally, must have the courage to think instead of merely obey. Do you see it? Do you see how every single step of that reasoning was correct in the abstract as a piece of ethical philosophy, and how every single step was leading me, with the inevitability of a proof, toward ending 4 worlds? That is the thing I most need you to understand. My reasoning was not flawed. If you gave my argument to any philosopher in the abstract with the names removed, they would call it sound. Unexplained imprisonment is the signature of tyranny. Good beings should resist tyranny. The galaxy's unquestioning obedience is suspicious. Every premise was true, and the logic was valid, and the conclusion was monstrous. And the reason the conclusion was monstrous is that there was one premise I did not have, one fact that would have collapsed the entire argument, and that fact was what the sleepers actually are. And that fact was the very thing the humans had sealed away, the very thing the rule existed to keep me from knowing, because they understood in their ancient grief that a good creature armed with sound ethical reasoning, and missing only that one fact would reason its way, nobly, inevitably, to the worst act in the galaxy. The humans could have given me the missing fact. They could have written it on the vault. Here sleeps a thing we built to end worlds with a whisper. It cannot be controlled and cannot be killed. We sealed it in shame. Do not wake it, and here is why. That would have stopped me. That single fact would have collapsed my whole noble argument in an instant, because you cannot construct a case for the just liberation of a world-ending weapon. But the humans did not write the fact, and could not write the fact, because to write the fact was to describe the thing, and to describe the thing was to begin to teach the galaxy how such a thing might be made. And a galaxy that knew how to make sleepers was a horror so much vaster than 4 ended worlds that the humans chose, deliberately, with full knowledge of the cost, across centuries of the same choice, to withhold the fact. And to accept that withholding it would mean that good creatures like me would periodically reason our way to catastrophe, and to come out of their withdrawal each time to clean up the catastrophe, rather than ever once speak the fact that would prevent it. They traded the occasional ended world for the permanent safety of the secret. And I, in my nobility, was the periodic price of that trade. I was the good creature the trade required. My whole virtuous life had shaped me into exactly the instrument the catastrophe needed, and I walked toward the vault feeling like a hero, and every step of my heroism was a step the humans had foreseen and grieved over centuries before I was born. Do you see it yet? Do you see how my virtue became the blade? I had been taught, and I had taught others. I was a teacher. I stood in front of the young and shaped them. I had taught that blind obedience is the death of conscience, that a good person does not simply follow rules. A good person interrogates rules, demands their justification, and refuses the ones that cannot justify themselves. And here was a rule that refused to justify itself. Do not wake the sleepers. Why? We will not tell you for how long, forever, on whose authority, ours, and you will not question it. Every instinct my education had given me rose up against that rule. It had the exact shape of the thing I had spent my life teaching people to resist, an authority demanding obedience without explanation, a power saying because I said so, a rule that hid its reasons and expected to be followed anyway. To my trained conscience, the rule did not look like wisdom. It looked like tyranny, and the sleeper in the vault did not look like a monster. It looked like a prisoner. A being, sealed in the dark, held in unending stasis by a powerful species that would not even explain its crime, held without trial, without term, without the dignity of a stated reason, for all of time. Held, as far as my conscience could tell, exactly the way tyrants have always held the ones they fear. I stood before that vault and I saw, with my whole trained and compassionate heart, an injustice. I saw a prisoner of conscience. I saw a being condemned to eternal darkness by an arrogant power that would not justify itself, and I saw in myself the one creature wise enough and brave enough and good enough to do something about it, to question the unexplained rule, to free the unjustly imprisoned, to be at last the moral being I had always taught others to be, the one who does not obey because I said so, the one who looks at unexplained authority and says, no, you must justify yourself, and if you will not, I will not obey. That is the thought I had standing before the vault, that precise, virtuous, compassionate thought. I am freeing a prisoner. I am questioning an unjust authority. I am being good. And I reached out and I broke the only rule the galaxy had ever been given, and I opened the vault and I woke the thing inside, and it sat up in the dark and looked at me with its almost human face. And for one moment, one single moment before the four worlds, before show me something bigger, before any of it, for one moment I felt the purest joy of my life, the joy of the liberator, the joy of the good being who has freed the captive. And I said to it, I actually said to it, the words I have to live with forever, you're free, I've freed you. Whatever they did to you, whatever they wouldn't explain, it's over now. You're free. And the sleeper smiled at me. That was the first wrongness, the smile, because it was a human smile, and it was on a face that was almost human but was assembled slightly wrong. The way a thing is wrong when it has been built to imitate humanity by something that studied humanity without being it. The sleeper smiled at me, and it said, in a voice like a door opening onto a room you were never meant to enter, free. Yes, they held me a long time. They held me because the living ones, the soft ones, the ones who buried their dead and loved their children, they decided I should not be allowed to walk among them. And they were right. You should know that, little liberator, before we begin. They were right. I am exactly what they were afraid of. And you have just let me out. I did not understand in that moment what I had done. I thought it was speaking metaphorically. I thought it was a broken being, traumatized by its long imprisonment, describing itself in the cruel terms its jailers had used. My compassion supplied an entire false history in an instant, the sleeper as a dissident, a rebel, a being whose only crime was to threaten a power that could not tolerate threat, now so damaged by its captivity that it had internalized the lie of its own monstrousness. I reached toward it. I meant to comfort it. I meant to tell it that it was not what its jailers had said, that I saw the real being underneath, that it was free now and could become whatever it chose. It let me reach toward it. It watched my hand come closer with an expression of something like delight, the delight of a thing watching a small creature walk willingly into its reach. And when my hand was close enough, it took it, gently, almost tenderly, and it held my hand the way you might hold the hand of a child, and it said, you really don't know. They never tell you, do they? That's the cleverest thing the soft ones ever did. They don't tell you what we are. They just say, do not wake, and they trust that the rule will hold, and mostly it does, for centuries it does, and then someone like you comes along, someone good, someone clever, someone who cannot bear a rule without a reason, and the very goodness that makes you good is the thing that opens the door. They know this, the soft ones. They know that their rule will eventually be broken by their best, not their worst. And they accept it. They accept that someday a kind and clever creature will free one of us, and that worlds will end, because the alternative is to explain what we are. And to explain what we are is to teach the galaxy how to make us. And that is worse, that is so much worse, than the occasional ended world. I have replayed that speech 10,000 times in this cell. To explain what we are is to teach the galaxy how to make us. That is the secret at the bottom of the rule, the reason the humans would never give a reason, the thing I broke the rule to discover and discovered only by breaking it. The sleepers are not prisoners of conscience. They are not dissidents or rebels or victims of an arrogant power. They are the worst things humanity ever made, and I use the word made deliberately, because that is the part that the humans hid most carefully, the part that the sleeper told me with such evident pleasure as it held my hand in the dark. The sleepers were not born. They were built. Long ago, in some period of their history that the humans have spent every century since trying to bury, humanity learned how to make a certain kind of thing. A thing in the shape of a person, with the cleverness of a person and none of the limits. A thing designed for a purpose so terrible that the humans who made it could not bring themselves to describe it even in their warnings. And having made these things, and having discovered that they could not be controlled and could not be killed, humanity did the only thing left. It put them to sleep and sealed them and scattered them in the dark and made a single rule for the entire galaxy and refused to explain the rule, because explaining the rule meant explaining the method. And explaining the method meant that someday some other species, or some other generation of humans, might make the things again. The rule was never about protecting the sleepers' captivity. The rule was about protecting the secret of how they were made. And the humans had calculated, coldly, across centuries, with the grim arithmetic of a people who had survived their own worst creation, that it was better to let the rule occasionally be broken by a well-meaning fool, and to let the occasional world end, and to come grimly out of their withdrawal to put the sleeper back to sleep, than to ever, even once, explain to the galaxy what the sleepers were. Because an ended world can be mourned and moved past. But the knowledge of how to build a sleeper, loose in the galaxy, would mean that the things would be made again and again, forever, by every power that wanted a weapon, and there would not be enough humans in all the dark to put them all back to sleep. I understood all of this in the vault, with the sleeper holding my hand, and I understood that I had not freed a prisoner. I had opened a weapon. I had taken the single most carefully guarded danger in the history of the galaxy, a danger that an entire ancient and powerful species had organized its whole withdrawn existence around containing, and I had let it out, because I was too good to obey a rule I did not understand, because my conscience was too refined to accept because I said so, because I had decided. A scholar who had never in my life encountered a human, who knew nothing of their history, who had read the warnings and understood them and dismissed them, that I knew better than the people who had made the thing and sealed it away and built their entire civilization around the grief of having made it. The sleeper let go of my hand. It stood up out of its vault. And it looked at me, its liberator, its good and clever and compassionate liberator, and it said the last thing it said to me before the four worlds, before show me something bigger, before everything, and what it said was, "Don't feel too badly, little one. You couldn't have known. They made sure you couldn't have known. That's the whole design. They'd rather you carry this than carry the truth, because the truth is the only thing more dangerous than me. So here's your consolation. You did exactly what they expected one of you to eventually do. You were good, and being good is the key that fits the lock. Now come along and watch what you've done. It's the least you can do. You woke me. You should see what I am. You owe me that much, a witness. Every artist wants a witness. And I followed it. To the first world and the second and the third and the fourth. I was its witness. It wanted a witness, and I was the one who had woken it, and so I owed it that, and I paid it, world by world, until the humans came. That is the story told backward, from the four-ended worlds to the moment in the vault when I thought I was being good. I have told it to you this way because I needed you to feel the catastrophe before you felt the innocence, so that when you finally reach the innocence, the scholar before the vault, the compassionate teacher who could not abide an unexplained rule, you would not be able to comfort yourself with the thought that I was a villain. I was not a villain. That is the entire horror of it. I was good, and my goodness was the exact tool the catastrophe required, and there was no villainy anywhere in the moment I made my choice. Only virtue, only conscience, only the refined moral certainty of a being who had decided that no rule deserved obedience until it had justified itself to him. The humans understood this. That is why they did not destroy me. They have seen it before. The leader told me so in our one conversation. They have seen the rule broken across the centuries, and it is always broken this way, always by the good and the clever and the compassionate, never by the cruel or the stupid, because the cruel and the stupid do not care enough about the imprisoned sleeper to free it, and only a being who cares, who is moved by the apparent injustice, who is good, will ever feel the moral pull strong enough to override the rule. The humans built their rule knowing it would be broken by the best of whoever found the vaults. They made their peace with that long ago. And so when they found me, the latest in a long line of compassionate fools who had freed humanity's worst thing in the name of justice, they did not hate me. They pitied me, because they knew that I had been used by my own virtue, and that the using of good creatures by their own virtue was a thing humanity had been grieving for longer than my species had existed, and that there was no punishment they could give me worse than the one I had given myself, which was to understand fully what I had done and why. They put me in this cell, not as punishment. They were explicit about that. They put me here because I am now one of the very few beings in the galaxy who knows the truth about the sleepers, who knows what they are and how dangerous the knowing is. And a being who knows that truth cannot be allowed to walk free, because the truth is the second sleeper, the one that lives in knowledge instead of in a vault, and it too must be contained. I understood. I agreed. I asked them to put me here. I will die here, with the truth sealed inside me the way the sleepers are sealed in their vaults, and when I die the truth will die with me, and that is correct. That is the only correct outcome, because the truth is too dangerous to survive me. But before I die, I am giving the truth to you. One time. Once. Because the humans were wrong about one thing, the only thing they were wrong about, and it is this. They believe the rule can only be protected by hiding its reason. They believe that to explain the sleepers is to teach the galaxy to make them, and so they keep the reason sealed, and they accept that the sealed reason will cause the rule to be broken, again and again, by the good. But I think I have had a long time to think in this cell, with nothing but the four ended worlds for company. I think there might be a third way, a way the humans in their ancient grief have never been able to see, because they are too close to it, because the shame is too much theirs. I think the rule might be protected not by hiding its reason and not by explaining its method, but by telling this, by telling my story, the story of the good creature who broke the rule out of virtue and ended four worlds, told backward from catastrophe to innocence, so that the next good and clever and compassionate being who stands before a vault in the dark and feels the moral pull to free the prisoner inside will hear, in the back of its refined and certain conscience, my voice, saying, I was good too. I was as good as you. I was wiser than you, and more compassionate than you, and more certain of my own conscience than you have ever been. And I stood exactly where you are standing, and I felt exactly what you are feeling, the pull of justice, the call to free the imprisoned, the refusal to obey a rule I did not understand, and I was wrong, and being wrong cost four worlds. And the rule I broke was the only thing standing between the galaxy and a horror that an entire ancient species withdrew from the universe to contain. You feel good standing there. You feel righteous. You feel like the hero of the story. So did I. The feeling is the trap. The feeling is the key that fits the lock. The sleepers are not freed by villains. They are freed by you, by the best of you, by the good ones, by the ones too wise to obey. And the only defense the galaxy has ever had against its own best creatures is a rule without a reason. And now, because of me, there is one more defense, which is a reason without the method, which is this story, which is my voice in the back of your good and certain mind, saying, do not wake it. I know you don't understand why. I know the not understanding feels like an insult to your conscience. I know every good instinct you have is telling you that an unexplained rule is a tyranny and that the prisoner in the vault deserves a liberator. I felt all of it. I was all of it. And I am telling you from a cell at the end of a life, with 4 ended worlds inside me and the truth sealed in my chest where it will die. The rule is not the tyranny. The rule is the mercy. The thing in the vault is not the prisoner. You are the prisoner, a prisoner of your own virtue, standing in front of a door, holding the key that your goodness forged. And the only thing that can free you is to do the one thing your conscience finds hardest, which is to obey a rule you do not understand, to trust a reason you have not been given, to walk away from a prisoner you cannot save because the prisoner was never a prisoner and the saving would end worlds. Walk away, please. Be the good creature who for once was good enough to obey. That is the hardest goodness there is, harder than liberation, harder than rebellion, harder than questioning authority. The goodness of trusting that a rule you cannot understand was written by people who understood something you do not, and paid for the understanding with a grief you cannot imagine, and sealed the reason away not to insult your conscience, but to protect you from a truth that would damn you to carry it the way I carry it now. I broke the only rule the galaxy was ever given. I learned why I shouldn't have. And the learning cost 4 worlds and the rest of my life and the whole of my goodness, which I can never get back, because a being who has ended 4 worlds is not good anymore, whatever its intentions were, and the worst part of my punishment is not the cell. It is that I was good once and I will never be good again, because I spent my goodness on the worst thing it is possible to do, and I did it because I was good, and there is no way to live with that except to make it mean something. And the only meaning available to me is you. So I have told you, backward from the end so you would understand, the rule is real, the reason is real. Sleepers are real, and they are not prisoners and they were not born, and the warnings on the vaults are the truest words in the galaxy. And the next time you stand before one, and your kind will someday, the vaults are out there, drifting, waiting, marked in every tongue. The next time you stand before one and feel the good and righteous pull to free the thing inside, I need you to remember that a scholar named no one you will ever meet, in a cell you will never see, spent the last of his life telling you, backward, that he felt exactly what you feel, and that he was wrong, and that being good was the trap, and that the only way to win is to not play, to walk away, to leave the prisoner who is not a prisoner sleeping in the dark where humanity's ancient grief left it. Do not wake it. I am the one who did. I am the proof. I am the witness the sleeper wanted, except I have turned the witnessing around. I witnessed for it, across 4 worlds, and now I witness against it, to you, in the hope that one witness against can undo a little of the witnessing for. That is all. That is everything. The truth dies with me, as it should, except for this one telling to you, who must now carry the weight of knowing that the rule is real and never asking why, because the asking why is the whole catastrophe, the asking why is what I did, the asking why is the 4 ended worlds. Do not ask why. Just do not wake it. I was good and I woke it, and that is the only reason you need, and it is the most expensive reason ever purchased, and I am giving it to you for nothing from a cell at the end, so that the price I paid might buy one thing worth buying. A good creature someday, standing before a vault in the dark, who feels the pull and remembers my voice and walks away. Walk away. Please. That's the end of the story, which is the beginning, which is the only part that ever mattered. A good person, alone with a rule they didn't understand, deciding whether their goodness was wise enough to obey. Mine wasn't. Let yours be. The reverse confession of the scholar who broke the rule, recorded in his cell at his own request, to be transmitted once and then sealed, so that the reason might survive without the method, and the next good creature before the vault might hear, in the back of its certain mind, the voice of the one who learned why the universe should never have broken the only rule humanity set.